We are coming up towards the end of May, and that means that it is elderflower season. And today I am going to start one of the first foraging recipes that I ever did, and it's elderflower champagne. Now, I'm still a little bit early for elderflowers, but I've had a look at my recipe that I use, which I will link down below in the show notes, and it says that you can also use dried elderflowers in exactly the same way, and then it gives a link for where you can buy your organic elderflowers. Now, last year I made a stash of elderflower champagne using fresh elderflowers, but then towards the end of June I was house sitting for a friend, and on a walk in the area one day I spotted the most enormous elderflower berry bush that you've ever seen. So I collected lots and lots of elderflowers and I dried them because I heard that you could store them long term dried. So I did that. I've now had them stored for a year. But having now seen that I can use dried elderflowers to make elderflower champagne, it will give you a slightly different quality and slightly darker drink, but apparently it's just as good. So I'm going to use my dried elderflowers, which I have stored here in my paper bag. Now, you only normally need 7, 8, 9 good sized flower heads to make the recipe I'm going to make. Because I've never used the dried ones before, I'm going to halve the recipe and test this in case it doesn't work, because some of the ingredients we are using isn't cheap. I'm on a budget and I can't afford to waste ingredients. So this is what dried elderflowers look like. Hope you can see that. Now, the important thing about the elderflowers not only is the taste, but it's the yeast that makes them fizzy, which is why they call it champagne. I haven't done anything to these flowers, I literally just bagged them, so they should still all have their pollen on them, which creates the yeast. So I'm going to run through this whole recipe as I do it, and I'm going to tell you the halves that I'm doing to make a small batch, because it might be, if you want a really tight budget, that, you know, 1.5 pounds of sugar is a lot, a pound of honey or 2 lemons is too much, because these things aren't cheap anymore. Now, one of the things I did buy last year was this. I found it in Morrison's for £1, and I do use lemon juice in various things. It's great when you're making jam and all that sort of thing. So I bought that and I've never opened it, and I've had this, goodness, I don't even know how long I've had it. It's good until October, but I've had lemon juice sometimes in the cupboard for years and it's been fine. You can use bottled lemon juice instead of fresh lemons, and I also still have in the freezer some lemon rinds left over from some lemons that I bought last year. So I'm going to add that, because you need these things to help the whole recipe ferment and do what it's supposed to do. So normally this recipe would call for the following ingredients: 1.5 pounds of granulated sugar, 4 cups of, it says unchlorinated water. I've never done that because buying bottled filtered water is expensive, so I will just boil the water and use it like that. So as well as the sugar, you've got 4 cups of boiling water, 12 cups of cold water, the juice and rind from 2 lemons, and 2 tablespoons of, I think it's apple cider vinegar. I don't have any apple cider vinegar in at the moment, but I have loads of white wine vinegar, so sorry, white wine vinegar it is. And then also you can put in a pinch of yeast. I use just a little pinch of bread yeast. I used to make my bread using an American white bread recipe with yeast. I don't do that anymore because this stuff's expensive, and it was a long scale process, but I've kept hold of the yeast and I pop a little pinch of that in. That expired in 2017. It's just dry yeast. It'll store forever. So I'm going to start by boiling the water that I need for my sugar. Now don't forget, I'm doing half recipes, so this is 3/4 of a pound of sugar. I'll be boiling 2 cups of water for boiling water. Then I will have 6 cups of cold water. The juice and rind from 1 lemon. 1 lemon is equal to about 3 tablespoons of juice. So I'm going to do 3 tablespoons of juice, some rind, and then 1 tablespoon of the vinegar. So let's start prepping the water. As I've probably warned you before, I'm a bit slapdash with ingredients. The vinegar is not the right vinegar, but we're not going to worry about that. So now I'm going to put in the last ingredient, which is the elderflowers. Now I'm not quite sure how many elderflowers I'm putting in here, so I'm just going to throw in a couple of handfuls, because I'm halving the ingredients and it's only supposed to be 7 or 8 heads, so it might end up being a little bit strong. So in it goes. I hope this works. I would hate to waste the ingredients. That's going to take a while to reconstitute itself. The difference between this and a regular recipe is that the flowers would be cream coloured. They're basically exactly the same thing. That has to sit for 48 hours now. So I'm going to pop a lid on and we'll agitate it a couple of times a day. So we're going to come back in 2 days. It's now, well, it should be 48 hours later, but it's actually 72. I think that's right. Because you can leave the elderflower to brew a little bit longer, especially if you don't see the fizz. And I tend to end up leaving it longer because it never looks like it's really fizzed a lot, although it still has a lot of brewing time to go. So I got to 48 hours, added a little bit more yeast just to give it an extra oomph, and left it another 48 hours. In the meantime, a couple of days ago I went out for a walk and saw some elderflower bushes that have just started to flower. So I managed to pick enough flowers to make a fresh batch. So when I got home I made a fresh batch. That fresh batch has now had 48 hours, so I'm going to do that as well, because I was worried that using the dried flowers may not be as good, and I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity before I go away to make this. So I have the version that's been made with the dried flowers from last year, and I have a version with the flowers that I picked the same day. So I'm going to strain both those varieties today and bottle them, and we'll see how they look. So I need a jug. I'm going to use a sieve, and I have some fabric to strain the drink through. I also have some fabulous bottles. These look like old-fashioned milk bottles. My parents buy their apple juice from a posh place. They have a farm shop where they live. So I asked them to keep me the glass bottles because I love these bottles. I use them for pasta and couscous and all sorts of things, and they're great for storing elderflower champagne as well because they pop in the fridge perfectly. So I am going to strain into this. I might have to strain more than once, and then I'm going to pop it into the bottles, and I'll come back when I've done that. Really does smell like elderflower champagne, even though it is darker. It would not normally be this dark, and that's purely because the flowers were dried, so they were brown. And it does say in the recipe, if you use the dried ones, that's what will happen. So I'm going to start just pouring this in. It looks like a massive sample, which it would do anyway, regardless of whether I'd used new or old. Right, I've run out of jug room, so I'm just going to squeeze that out and pop that into my composting bin. Like there. And now I'm going to pop this into a bottle to make room for the next batch. It does look really dark. So I halved my recipe, and there's enough for 2 bottles here actually, because I've still got some more. So you do get a lot for a half recipe. Right, I'm just going to finish this one off. I also want to try a drop because I'm intrigued to see what it tastes like, despite the colour. It tastes really rich. However, I wasn't sure how many flowers I was putting into this. Because they're dried and all scrunched together, it doesn't look like you're putting in a lot. So I may have put in far too much. So I'm going to put those away. And now I'm going to decant the second lot. More bottles. You can never have too many good bottles. Give those a quick rinse. And let's get going with the second lot. Now, last year, or it might have been the year before, I was in my parents' loft doing some sorting out for them. And at the back of the loft we found my dad's demijohns from when he used to brew his own beer or wine, can't remember which, probably both. So I brought a couple of these home because these are fabulous for making elderflower champagne. And I bought the things for the top, just makes life a bit easier. They're brilliant. Right, so same process again, but with the different colour. So let's see how we get on with this one. to try this one as well. See if you can tell the difference. Not really any difference in the flavour. And that's a good thing, because it means that I can use all those dried flowers and not have to worry about hitting the season. But here's the difference. It's a massive difference in colour. Now, these need to continue to ferment, and they will get fizzier as they sit. It does take a while. So I'm going to leave these at room temperature for about a week. And you just need to regularly, a couple of times a day, just turn the caps to release the pressure. Because if you don't, eventually it will build up and they will explode. And they do say don't use cork tops, push tops, or plastic lemonade style bottles, because they can explode. These are stronger. But a couple of times a day, just release the air, just so the pressure comes off. So I'm going to let these sit for a week, which means I'm going to have to take them down with me when I go away. I might leave these here in the fridge with their tops just slightly off, and take these two with me, because I can share one with my parents, and the other I'm hopefully going on a picnic with an old school friend, and this will be a nice thing to take with me. So that's it. Elderflower Champagne, 2 colour versions. We'll see how we get on. We'll see how this behaves in a few weeks' time when it's ready to drink. That's it.